Namaskar. I'm indeed honored to be here. I'm always very honored to be invited in any place with Swami Vivekananda Association because he was the true hero of modern dharma all over the world. So all of us in our own humble ways are trying to continue what Swamiji started and continues to inspire us. This is my 5th book. It's called The Battle for Sanskrit. Actually, it's Sanskriti, the battle for Sanskriti, Indian civilization, dharma, Vedic culture, Hinduism, all those you can think of. Because Sanskrit is the DNA, it's the architecture for all our Sanskriti. So the battle for Sanskrit is sort of the battle for all our culture, civilization. That's what I'm trying to talk about. The question comes, who is fighting whom in this battle? I'll talk about. And what is the battle about? What are they fighting about? So the byline has 3 questions that show 2 camps. Is Sanskrit political or sacred? Is Sanskrit political or sacred? Oppressive or liberating? Dead or alive? Now, there's a very powerful camp of Western Sanskrit studies with a lot of influence among Indians, media people, university professors, government people, which takes the first position in each of these 3 pairs. So according to them, Sanskrit is political, oppressive, and dead. The second option in each of these 3 questions says Sanskrit is sacred, liberating, alive, which is the position I defend. So that's the battle. It has become fashionable for Marxist, leftist, atheist, Gnostic scholarship to take on Sanskrit as a body of texts, not just language, but Sanskrit as a body of texts, Vedas, Itihas, grammar, Smritis, and think of them as not sacred at all, which means that, of course, they know that people claim them to be sacred, but they don't consider Shruti to be genuine and valid. They reject the Shruti claim, and they claim that the Paramarthika and Vyavaharika aspects in the Vedas cannot both be true. In fact, only Vyavaharika has to be studied and considered useful. Paramarthika is the sacred side, the transcendental side, is to be sidelined because it's a sign of being primitive, backward, superstitious, irrational. Since you can't measure it empirically the way you can measure and test Vyavaharika truths, you can't do that for Paramarthika. So Paramarthika is rejected by this group of people. Besides removing the Paramarthika from the context, because in our tradition we look sacredness as the context in which we read the text. When we read any Sanskrit text, we look at it through the lens of sacredness. So they removed that, and that is not the reason, that is not the method for looking at these texts according to them. They add 2 things which they see as the crux, the tattva of these texts. One is social oppression. That they have to look at, Shudras being oppressed, women being oppressed, somebody being excluded, Sanskrit is privileged, upper caste, this sort of thing. So they're looking at it like a human rights problem. They're looking at the data to look for human rights problems. So you can see the motive. And the second thing they want to add is political. That these texts have always had a political design, always. It's not something recent. the Rajas sponsored these texts because they wanted to spread their power. So political domination of the ruling elite was the motive for these texts. So the debate is between insiders and outsiders. Insiders, and I count myself as one of them, I would count our monks in Ramakrishna Mission, various other lineages, Peethams, Mathas, as insiders. Insiders are those who consider the legitimacy of the Vedic Shruti, who see divinity as the basic purpose of these texts, to unravel and get us closer to that, the transcendent reality, who see this as adhyatmic truth, who see our tradition as something which is part of our Swadharma, our sadhana. So the basic insider view is one of acceptance of the tenets as the Vedas want to be seen. Now, the outsiders in olden days were called Charvaks. They dismissed the Vedas. They made fun of them. They said all this is mumbo jumbo. It's hocus pocus. Incorrect. It's meant to mesmerize and make a fool out of people, exploit them. So the outsiders do not believe what the insiders accept. Now, there's nothing wrong in having outsiders. Nothing wrong. We don't stop them. We don't burn books. We don't accuse people and tell them to stop. We have a long tradition of debate. So we debate them. And in the Vedic times, the Vedic people debated the Charvaks, who were atheists. The difference is today, the Charvaks have come back. The leftist, Marxist, atheists today are Charvaks 2.0. That's how in this book, I have a section called Return of the Charvaks. So Charvaks are back with a vengeance. They are more powerful than the previous Charvaks because they got money, material, power and wealth. They're funded by powerful organizations. They work in prestigious Ivy Leagues. Indian government giving them Padam Shris and Padam Bhushans. Narayan Murthy giving them millions of dollars to take control of translating these books. So they have penetrated the Indian mind more than before. The last 500 years, Western science, technology and rise of the material world has been a big boon to the Charvaks. Because now Charvaks can say, to make airplanes, it was not necessary to know any Shruti. To make your smartphone, to make internet, car, all the things we enjoy, it's not because of anything to do with Brahman, idea of Vedant, not used. Maybe those are true or not true, but they are irrelevant to the main things progressing society. So Charvaks have valid, good, powerful arguments, the Charvaks 2.0, because they're riding on the wave of the success of this kind of civilization, the modern Western world of the last 500 years. So the Indian Charvaks have got something to latch on to and say, okay, now we are back. Previous Charvaks didn't have that. And the modern Charvaks can say, we are connected with Harvard, Columbia, Oxford, and I fly there, I'm part of that, so the glamour is there. So it can impress the masses. The masses feel, okay, this is the real stuff, and that's the role model. The Charvaks have become fashionable. It's fashionable. It's cool, their lifestyle. So don't trivialize or dismiss the return of the Charvaks. They're very strong and more threatening than the past. Now, I'm not insulting or accusing or abusing these people. Actually, I'm lifting them up to a high stature, because being called Charvaks is a sign of being a very good scholar. Charvaks in the past were good scholars. It was not that they did not know Sanskrit or they lacked rigor or that they were not intelligent. The problem we had is their basic metaphysical assumptions we don't agree with. Their basic metaphysical assumptions were that this world of senses, material world, is the ultimate world. and there's nothing beyond it. So being an atheist was their basic starting point. And to call the whole Indian left and Marxists and secularists as Charvak 2.0, in a sense I'm glorifying, I'm giving them stature. I'm giving them stature. I'm saying that, okay, we know such people, we've had them before, and you are back. So we will deal with you again. The challenge it creates is for our insiders. People who are embedded in Vedic culture must no longer ignore these Charvaks, have to respond to them. So I've written this book. This is my Purva Paksh of the Charvak 2.0. Like Shankara did Purva Paksh of the opponent. In those days, Purva Mimamsa, those kind of people, yeah, Sankhya people, Buddhists. Today, Purva Paksh of those is not so important because they are not the ones threatening us. It's Charvak 2.0. They are all over. In India, a lot of Indians fashionable to be Charvaks. So it is important for the insiders, the traditional scholars of Vedic lifestyle, Vedic culture, Vedic philosophy, to accept that we have now got a challenge from Charvak 2.0 and to give a response. I am writing this book not scolding the Charvaks, but scolding the insiders for not doing their job and not studying the Charvaks seriously and not giving them a response. I'm saying, I went to the Sanskrit college in Karnataka Sanskrit College in Bangalore a few days ago, and there are a couple hundred people, and so I said, how many of you have done Purva Paksha of the prominent Western Indologists today? At first nobody raised their hand. Then one guy, and then second. Out of 200-300 people, 2 claimed to have done Purva Paksha. Now that's unfortunate, because our tradition says you must study the other. You can't dismiss them, you can't ignore them, you can't trivialize them, you can't bombastically say, oh, they're all bad, we don't need to worry about it. One guy said, I reject them because they are Rakshasas, so I don't need to study them. And I said, that's not accepted. It's not acceptable. You have to give an answer to his position. If he said, no, they have bad gunas. I said, if a person with good guna or a bad guna would hit a sixer, you can't say he's not allowed to sixer because he's got bad guna. Sixer is a sixer. According to the rules of cricket, it's a sixer. If a person wins chess tournament, you can't look at his character and say, okay, he's got bad character, he can't win. If Einstein somebody shows that Einstein had bad morality, you can't say his theory of relativity is wrong. So the person and what they are producing are two separate things. The person may be a bad kind of person, but he may have come up with some logic that we have to deal with. So you see, our people are too easy to dismiss and trivialize the opponent. And I feel that is a very serious problem. It is our laziness. You could say it is our tamas, that we don't want to face this. Either we don't want to face it for one bunch of reasons, or we join them. Lot of our insiders are on their payroll of the outsiders. This is another thing I found while looking for scholars to help me in this book. I asked a lot of people, and top Sanskrit chancellor, vice chancellors, deans of Sanskrit departments, chair of Sanskrit departments referred me to good scholars. And I engaged some of them. Some, they wanted to do it as a principal, some we had to engage them with compensation to help me understand what is going on. But I must say, not one of them produced anything useful, and they dropped out. Some of them dropped out in a few days or a few weeks, some of them dropped out in 3-4 months. One very honest person in Bangalore, well known, says, I've spent several weeks, you've given me this 500-600 page book of the Western Indologists to read and analyze and discuss with you. I've only been able to understand the first 20 pages because it's written in very heavy English. It refers to Western thinkers we don't know about. It refers to Western Siddhanta that we don't know about. So I'll have to go and get a library, I'll have to take a lot of time, maybe it'll take 2-3 years just to understand what is he talking about. So one of the problems faced by the traditional scholar is that many of them are not trained in English, And even if they know English, they do not know Western Siddhant. They don't know who's Benjamin, who's Gramsci, who's Vico, and on, who's Heidegger. I mean, there are so many Western thinkers, intelligent, profound thinkers, with their own Siddhanta, with their own worldview. And we can't sort of say, okay, all that is wrong. We have to understand it and then give an answer. So Purv Paksh means we have to understand the other side. Uttar Paksh, we give a response. A lot of our people try to give Uttar Paksh without doing the Purv Paksh, which means it's opinion. Yeah, I don't understand you, I don't need to understand you, but I got a lot of opinions. Not allowed. To debate, you must understand. You must understand, I wrote a 500-page book to give you my understanding of what they're saying. Maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, maybe you can argue, but this is my best understanding. I put it on the record, and based on this, I give a response. So this kind of rigor we haven't had. Our traditional people haven't had. Now, all this leads us to the issue of adhikar. Who has adhikar to talk and discuss our tradition? Right now, the adhikar it exists with the outsiders. It's the only civilization among the major civilizations whose adhikar is with the outsiders. China studies, Mandarin studies, is done by Chinese. Chinese universities lead the effort, not Harvard. Chinese control the journals that are most prestigious. Chinese control the conferences. All the Westerners who want to study China, they go to Chinese universities for a degree. That's the most prestigious degree. Similarly, Japan studies is controlled by Japan. Russian studies, you need to know the Russian language, and that's where the academic work is done. Arab studies, they study Arabic. Persian studies controlled by Iran. But Indian studies is controlled by Harvard, Columbia, Chicago, Oxford. So my goal is to bring the adhikar back, and I call that Swadeshi Indology. We have to counter the Videshi Indology, not by dismissing them or banning them or doing all kind of wrong things or acts of abuse or violence or something, but by creating our own counter argument, our own Swadeshi Indology. There is an echo. I think if you don't keep changing it, it will be better. Just make it, adjust it. Yeah. Is it okay? Is it okay? So then don't change it at all. Just leave it, please. Thank you. So the question comes, who has adhikar? Because I'm often asked, who are you to represent the tradition? And the Westerners basically claiming that only they can give you the certificate. And I point out to them that neither Sri Ramakrishna nor Swami Vivekananda had a Western degree of PhD or some certification to qualify them. Nor did Sri Aurobindo, nor did Ramana Maharshi, nor did Adi Shankara, nor did Krishna. I mean, they didn't have, we are, the adhikaris in our tradition are not based on some Western certification. Even within our tradition, there are multiple kinds of adhikars. Learnedness in texts is only one kind of adhikar, Shastra, expert. We also have people who get their adhikar through a profound experience of bhakti. May not even be learned, may not even be literate, but huge experience in bhakti gives them that exalted state and gives them that adhikar to talk about what that state is. We have yogis. To be a yogi, you don't need to know how to read and write. Like a sitar player, don't need to know how to read and write. Yeah? Like a chef does not need to know how to read and write. These are embodied knowledge, knowledge embodied in you. And you teach, you learn from somebody else, oral tradition. One guru with embodied knowledge teaches somebody with embodied knowledge. So, yogi with adhyatmic knowledge, tantric with embodied knowledge, bhakti with embodied knowledge, don't even have to be text learned necessarily. Guru as somebody with adhikar transmitting to another person, and that person gets the adhikar, is not a system that the West understands. So our systems, multiple systems of adhikar and how it is transmitted is very interesting. The guru system is distinct. The yogi who achieves embodied state is distinct. The shastri who is text-based. The jnani who's done his transformation. Nididhyasanam, as Adi Shankara said. The bhakti person. There are many kinds of adhikars. So even amongst us, forget the West, even amongst us, we don't consider that there is just one type of adhikar. But the West has asserted its adhikar as a kind of monopoly over our tradition. So this is a problem. This is an issue I take exception with. And among the major problems I see in this book, the most important is the attempt to secularize by sidelining, marginalizing the sacred dimension, the transcendental reality, the Paramarthika. Now, for us, Paramarthika and Vyavarika are one integral unity. There is the Nirgun and Sagun. There is the transcendent and its manifestation. There is the divinity and its Leela. So, if we were to dismiss, ignore the transcendent realm, we become Charvaks, atheists, materialists. There is no guiding principle for dharma. There is just a very practical, whatever you can get away with. It's that sort of a world we end up in. And we know there's a problem with that kind of a world. Part of our problems in the world today are linked to excessive materialism, excessive consumerism, too much ego driving things. At the other extreme, if you have only Paramarthika and the person is escaping the Vyavarika, escapist, then the person doesn't have a social ethics. He's not concerned. He doesn't have compassion. You see? So, Swamiji created this Tattvamasi ethic, Swami Vivekananda, that the reason for compassion, Christians say love thy neighbor, but they don't say why. I love the neighbor, I love the other person because I see in him the same. Tattvamasi. The Tattvamasi ethic that Swami Vivekananda initiated, pioneered with this modern interpretation. It's an old Vedantin idea, but he reinterpreted, brought it into the modern place, is a very good example of living in the world. The passage goes through the world, the dharma is in this world, the karma is in this world, the bhakti is in this world, leading to a transcendent ultimate. So, this balance is very important. If you dismiss this world and only say, okay, the Paramarthika, the point is we are in this world, we have been taken birth, our prarabdha brought us here, we have to work it out, we have to go through this world. We have to start where we are, standing right now. We can't assume that we push a button and we're out of here. So this escapism from the Vyavarika, the Laukika doesn't work because it leads to irresponsible action. You could do anything and say, oh, this is all mithya anyway. You could commit murder and say it's all mithya. Doesn't matter. You could be a malpracticing doctor, kill some patients, and you could say dead or alive, doesn't matter, it's all mithya. So that isn't allowed. You are whether it's mithya or not, whether it is ultimately real or relative only, the point is you are in a state where you have to carry out ethically your dharma. Your swadharma is defined in the context of the mundane reality. That is where you have to do it. That is what Sri Krishna teaches. You can't escape from some lofty argument. You are here to carry out your dharma and fight the adharma. This is all carried out in the mundane world. Knowing the ultimate reality is beyond all this, you have to carry this out. So the balance and interrelatedness of Paramarthika and Vyavaharika is very profound, very deep in all our teachings. And therefore, the attempts to bifurcate and then dismiss the Paramarthika part is a very dangerous thing for us, and we should resist it. And this is one of the biggest arguments I'm giving in this book against the Western Indologists who are secularists, some of them outright communists. It's not Christian missionaries I'm criticizing in this book. I've done that in other books. It is extreme left-wing takeover of Sanskrit studies. Now, it's interesting that they praise Sanskrit and praise the text as secular, and many of our people fall for it. Imagine if there's a murti and there's an archaeologist who's secular, who doesn't believe in anything divine, any Shakti, any presence of divinity. He says, I'll praise it as beautiful painting. It's a beautiful painting. Look at the colors, look at the features, look at the fineness. Or it's a beautiful sculpture. So the praise is there, but the praise as a piece of stone or a piece of painting with nothing sacred in it. A person of our background would not like that. He would say, that's not good enough. I am not interested in this appreciation as a kind of a dead piece. It's living, it has divinity. We've done Pran Pratishta here. So, the same way, to praise poetry of Sanskrit as secular, Vyavaharika, Laukika, political poetry, to say this is, Ramayana is political poetry, is not something the Ramayana Bhakt will accept. You can say, I'm praising you, but you're praising in the wrong way. It's very important. And not very many of our people are able to nuance and differentiate that. That's what I wrote in this book, in clear terms. How much time do we have, Mohanji? It's 5:50, 5:25? Another? Okay, excellent. Then I have very good time. So, my project here is to bring to your attention that Vedas are being dismissed for their Shruti and looked upon as a source book to understand who was abusing whom. The revival of Sanskrit studies is being promoted as a way to figure out how to identify the toxicity, as they call it, the poisons, as they call it, in our texts, so that these can be removed. So we shouldn't be very proud that they are helping us. We should be concerned because our traditional people are losing ground when this kind of interpretation becomes fashionable. Now, no serious Christian would take it as a compliment if somebody said, Bible is beautiful poetry and beautiful military story of heroes and villains and who killed whom and how the emperor conquered. Of course, it has nothing to do with God. I mean, that's just made up. So, on the one hand, claiming to praise the Bible, but removing it of its holiness, removing the holy part of the Holy Bible, would not be acceptable by Christians. Similarly, the Quran, if somebody said there's no truth to the transcendent claims, it is just a story of warfare and some what happened and all that. Myth. You see, the Abrahamic religions do not like to be called myth. They do not, this is very interesting. I have a friend who is teaching in one college in the US, and he's been influenced a lot by my thinking on these matters. And he wrote to me one day and said, he's in some technical department. He says they offered a course on world mythologies. And he says, because of what you've said, I took that course just to understand. And they're teaching mythologies of non-Abrahamic religions. So he wrote to the guy and said, why not Jesus mythology and, Muhammad mythology and Moses mythology? And he got a very angry reply. He's a faculty member. He got a very angry reply saying that we can't teach like that because nobody will accept it. It'll be students and their parents will mind it. So he wrote to me. I said, you should tell him that teaching Ramayana as myth is the same problem. I mean, why don't you put in the same stature? If you want scientific proof of Ram, then you should also ask scientific proof of all these other things. Yeah. If you accept it as the faith of a people, then you should accept our faith as a people. So you put it on equal terms and use the same criteria, the same measurement, the same lens, the same yardstick. And he kept fighting. He could never get them to include the Abrahamic religions as part of the mythology course. So in the end, they dropped that course completely, but they did not allow him to tamper with the Abrahamic religions. See, we have to fight. We have to have people who are so informed and so educated about our point of view that they are able to assert. If they are scared because they're ignorant, they try one or two times to, assert themselves, and then they make a fool of themselves because they don't have the arguments. Then they run away and we lose. So we need informed people who've really done the tapasya. This is very hard intellectual tapasya to do this for many, many decades, to be that good. We need to train such people. Now, one of the things that came out of this Western Indology is that Sanskrit and Sanskriti spread across South Asia and Southeast Asia as a political device to assert power. In other words, wherever the king could popularize Ramayana, the king would become powerful because he's like Ram. Ram is divine, you can't challenge him, question him, he's a dictator, autocrat, absolute authority. He can oppress, he can ill-treat women, do whatever he wants, and it is allowed because he's the divine king. So the regular king would present himself in that way, popularize Ramayana. So it became a tool for political domination. This is a theory. And this is how a huge Sanskrit cosmopolis, as they call it, was created. A whole cosmopolis of Sanskrit was created. No military was required. It was a sophisticated intellectual job. No need for military like in the Roman Empire or any other empire to create a large territory under one cultural civilizational system. Here, the kings and the Brahmins had a conspiracy. The Brahmin would do a yagna in public. That would make the king look like, now with this yagna he's become divine. He has this authority. The Brahmin, the king in turn would sponsor the Brahmin, keep him well fed, give him good funding. And the Brahmin would use this to write prashastis for the king, praise for the king. So they're going back and forth, reinforcing each other. And the result would be, of this collaboration would be, that they would produce some nice kavya, political kavya like Ramayana kind of things and other things like it. And this would be a way to showcase the glory, glamour, might of the king and make the people have awe, and therefore the king could get away with whatever and nobody would question him. So this theory says that the tradition has to be looked at through kavya. If you want to understand the history of Indian civilization, you have to look at it through kavya, and the kavya has to be not sacred but political kavya, and the political kavya has to be seen as a tool of oppression. So this is it shows Sanskrit as a technology for franchising political domination and oppression. That's really what it amounts to. And the strange thing is that until I did this work and uncovered these things and started talking to them, none of our people had bothered to study. We're giving awards. We're giving awards to these people, funding them. And so when I had a few meetings with the leader of this Western Indology group called Sheldon Pollock, who's a very intelligent man, a very hard-working man, a good scholar like the Charvaks, at Columbia University, occupant of a prominent chair, won Padam Shri, getting a lot of grants. When I had meetings with him, I asked, how come I'm the first person who's taken a very comprehensive view of your life work and written a critique from the insider point of view? People who've written about your point of view are your own students and followers, and they're more or less all the time praising you. But nobody from an opposing camp has written such a comprehensive view. Why? He was very honest. He said, nobody done it. I didn't stop them. It's not my fault. I said, a doctrine, a point of view becomes more interesting when there's a balancing opposing side, and then we have debate. Then it's more interesting. Your work is very important. It should make Hindus introspect, because you are the Puru Pakshin. Somebody should do this introspect based on your thinking. You are a mirror that can help us learn better. He was absolutely right in saying, I never stopped anybody. They never did it. It's their problem. It seems that you should go and talk to them and find out why they haven't done it. They are your opponent in the sense that you want to take them to task. He's absolutely right. I do not blame the Western Indologists at all. I do not think that we ought to stop them. They are projecting the civilization they come from. And this left-wing atheist Western view is being popularized in Indian academics, like spreading like wildfire, fashionable among the Indian liberal thinking elite. Their idea of liberal is not moksha. It's not moksha. I don't know how you call it liberal. It is some kind of material liberal at a material level. It is important to liberate from poverty and have economic stuff. But so it's a certain imported idea, a certain set of imported doctrines that comprise this corpus, this library of intellectual ideas that are being promoted. A very troubling aspect of the Western Indology on Sanskrit and Sanskriti is a doctrine known as deep Orientalism. Deep Orientalism. Now, Orientalism is a term given to the Europeans who were studying Sanskrit. They were called Orientalists, starting with Sir William Jones in the 1790s. The picture on the cover shows Sir William Jones and the Pandits. Pandits are sitting on the floor, taking dictation, Sir William Jones telling them. And the story, this is in huge carving on a wall inside a chapel in Oxford. Take a lot of permission, long time for me to get in a professional camera, go inside and take a picture, put it on the cover. It's my picture. It took a lot of effort. Now, Sir William Jones and the Pandits, big carving, is about Sir William Jones calling himself the lawgiver of the Hindus. He gave the Hindus their laws, as if we didn't have any. And what he had done is, he got a lot of Pandits to compile different things from Manusmriti and here and there. And he did some Sanskrit studies. In 2 years, he claimed to have become an expert on Sanskrit studies. So he mastered all the texts according to himself. Actually, he was hiring Pandits to do the work and copy-paste here and there. It's not necessarily that. He certainly didn't do the tapasya. He certainly didn't do the whole system of learning that we go through. But he was the judge of the Supreme Court in Calcutta that the British East India Company set up. Imagine they set up a court called the Supreme Court of India, but run by the British East India Company. And he was the judge. So he, as the first prominent Sanskrit scholar from Europe, said he has discovered Sanskrit. He became the person often considered to be the one who discovered Sanskrit, as if we never discovered it before. You see. So he started what became known as Orientalism. And they did a lot of good work also. There is no doubt. They did a lot of good work also. They revived our interest. But they took all the important manuscripts to Europe. They have never been returned. By one estimate, there are 5 lakh Sanskrit manuscripts in foreign archives, libraries, museums. The government of India should ask them back, but nobody has bothered. So these are some of the oldest manuscripts of various texts. Some of the oldest manuscripts available are not in India, but somewhere else. So they did this to study. They got many ideas out of it. They got some scientific ideas, linguistic ideas, a lot of philosophical ideas, which they repackaged as Western thought. A lot of Western enlightenment, Western thought is actually inspired by other cultures which they plundered, from which they took ideas. And as a part of this came the Aryan invasion theory. It's a byproduct of Orientalism. Max Miller produced that less than 200 years ago. And then this Robert Caldwell, there's a statue of him in Chennai somewhere. He founded this Dravidian theory. And we worship these guys. as great thinkers. They started these theories which in India did not exist. I mean, the Tamil literature is so rich. If there was this history of we the Tamil people and we have been opposed by those the Aryan people, if this was true, then how come for thousands of years so many thousands of pages of Tamil text never mentioned this kind of theory? There is no Aryan Dravidian divide, no sense of we are the Dravidian people. That does not exist in the Tamil texts. It suddenly pops up when Bishop Caldwell thinks it's a good idea, and we accepted it. So either we have to think that we are dumb, our ancestors were dumb, and all this talk about great literary heritage is devoid of enough self-reflection, and we never discovered that we are Dravidians. We never really discovered that. Either we have to accept that, or we have to say that this whole theory is wrong. So it's become political. It's become politically incorrect to talk about all this, to raise issues. But once upon a time when Caldwell and Max Muller created these different theories, the point is that within Europe these were discussed, but in India nobody argued, no response was given. The Aryan theory was accepted very useful to the Europeans because the Germans could feel they have a heritage, the old great heritage of Aryans. British could feel that their rule in India is justified because if they are the Aryans, then they should civilize the natives, Aryans being superior. So this is an example of how Indology without response from our side becomes toxic, becomes a poison, becomes a dangerous thing. And today's entire this Dalit movement started as a caste system movement, and caste system is a distortion of jati and varna. We don't have the word caste, is not a Sanskrit word even. So you have to look at the history of Lord Risley in the late 1800s to see how he formulated and crystallized this idea of a linear hierarchical caste system, when before that it was a very fluid kind of a thing. There were jatis, some were poor, some were rich, there were problems, but it was not fixed like caste kind of a thing. So one of the audacious theories being promulgated is that Orientalism, all its bad things that they did helping the colonizers, Orientalists were like the intellectual army supporting the colonizer, working for them, funded by them. They were doing the R&D for the colonizer. And so that is being exposed as racist. And now the counter argument that has come up says that these Orientalists did not come up with racism on their own. They discovered this racism by studying Sanskrit. That Sanskrit contained ideas of abusing other people, excluding other people, ethnic superiority, inferiority, this hierarchy, violence over other people, was discovered by the colonizers when they studied Sanskrit. They got this idea and they also started adopting it. So their rule in India was not something the British thought of doing this kind of colonial oppression. They just continued the Brahmin and Kshatriya oppression. Oppression was always going on, and they just continued. They stepped into the shoes of the Indians, used the Indian Hindu law, and continued the oppression. So this is a way to absolve Europeans, let them off the hook of the things they've done. And then the theory goes that the Nazis in Germany studied Sanskrit and got a lot of these ideas of oppression, which led to the Holocaust. So this whole Nazism, hating the others, having violence against the others, rather than finding the origin of this in Germany's own history, rather than looking for racism in the past of the Europeans, which is full of that, rather than looking at in the Bible, the hatred for some other people. This tribe has to kill that tribe and this and that. Rather than looking at these things in their own civilizational past, this group of Indologists like to claim that these ideas originated in Sanskrit. So hence Sanskrit is deep Orientalism, and this other Orientalism of Europe is a superficial one. I don't let them off the hook. I tell them that earlier Orientalism was European. Today's Orientalism is American. This is Orientalism 2.0. It's a more sophisticated Orientalism. And I give a different history of how this Orientalism is based on, genocide of Native Americans, slavery of blacks, all that kind of stuff, to remind them that they can't blame all this on Sanskrit. This is their own problem. This problem is their own problem and they have to deal with it. So, in this manner, I give you in each chapter, a major area where I feel Sanskrit studies has to be revived correctly from the insider point of view, with the sacredness preserved, not looking at it primarily as a political, social doctrine. Now we have political issues, we have social issues. We must study them, we must find solutions for them. But we don't have to denigrate and throw out all our sacred texts as a result. We don't have to do it in a leftist, atheistic style. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge we got problems and we have to take ownership and resolve and deal with those problems. We have to do that. So I'm not absolving us from the responsibility to tackle, social, political problems, which we definitely have. Now, what I want to do as a result of this analysis is I want to create what I call a home team. And to me, a home team is a group of people or multiple groups of people based in India committed to taking back the adhikar, taking back Sanskrit studies, Indology and so on. So we have the world-class journals, academic journals here, academic conference once a year, best university type of for Indology and Sanskrit studies right here. And these should be connected with the spiritual organizations like Ramakrishna Mission, various mathas, and also fluent in English, fluent in studying and doing Purva Paksha and others. So I am looking for alliances with traditional groups of scholars to create this sort of a network of home team, a home team of scholars, Swadeshi Indology you might call it. So I want to conclude by just telling you that this book was always kind of in the pipeline, but I became more enthusiastic and interested because about 18 months ago I was told that Sringeri Peetham was going to give to an Ivy League university and under the control of one of these Charvak people, the authority to represent Adi Shankara's legacy, Adi Shankara's philosophy, officially in the name of Sringeri Peetham. So it's like outsourcing your heritage. It's an amazing thing. I mean, this is so amazing that they were about to do that. So I intervened. I didn't say stop and all. I just said, let me do a Purva Paksh and present it to you. Then you can decide. They had not done a Purva Paksh. You're about to spend $4 million budget to set this up. Why can't you spend a tiny fraction to get a report from some neutral people on who are these guys, who are these Charvaks, is it fair or unfair, what do they think of Adi Shankara? All that has to be figured out. And I ran into a lot of anger. Rather than thanking me for helping them, rather than they kind of thought I'm spoiling, I'm kind of interfering. I don't have any intentions to interfere. I just want to do my job as a scholar and bring this to the knowledge of the public and let people decide for themselves what they want to do. So if Ramakrishna Mission were deciding that they'll create a Swami Vivekananda chair in some Ivy League, I would suggest it is very important before you do that, let's do a Purva Paksh on those scholars. What have that university produced? Who are these scholars? What is their ideology? What wavelength are they on? And even if they are fine, I would put in the contract some requirements that they must subscribe to certain things, certain lifestyle. And I would also make sure that people ordained as monks in the Ramakrishna Mission are the ones who are sent, because they should be the ones representing. And it should not be that we give the money, put some name and let others do it. I will tell you that Judaism studies is mostly done by rabbis, mostly. Many imams are involved in Islam studies. Many ordained Buddhists by Dalai Lama are teaching Buddhism. So it is not like ordained monks are not allowed to teach in the academy. They should be, if they get proper degrees and credentials. So I would rather spread the ideas globally using our own resources as opposed to handing somebody else millions of dollars and hoping that they'll treat us well, because that's not a smart idea. So adding further pain, in the last few days I heard that the new government is thinking of $50 million to be given to Western Indology. So I'll have more fights. And that's because now the Western Indologists are trying to infiltrate the government by getting Hindus who are close to the government organizations to represent their case. And some of these Hindus are well established with the Hindu political organizations, well established, but compromised in the sense that they think the other side is good, they're not bad, they want to get Indians to fund Westerners to do Indology. Very strange, very strange. So with that I will close. Thank you very much, and I would love to take your questions.